When the Galactic Council gathered for their seasonal meeting, the atmosphere inside their grand chamber felt unusually heavy. Representatives from dozens of worlds took their seats around a wide circular hall. Each one carried files, reports, and observations about planets across the galaxy. Most meetings were calm, routine, and predictable. But this time, there was one subject everyone whispered about before the session even started. That subject was Earth. For many years, Earth had been on the Council's observation list. It was a small blue planet with a young population that hadn't yet discovered advanced space travel. Still, the Council watched it closely because humans were unlike any other species they had encountered. Some representatives admired humans, calling them inventive and emotionally strong. Others weren't so sure. They believed humans were too unpredictable, too emotional, too quick to shift from sadness to joy, from fear to courage. Many council members feared that if Earth ever entered the wider galaxy unprepared, it might cause instability. When the meeting officially began, the lead coordinator stood up and addressed the room. He explained that Earth had finally reached a point where the council must decide its future. Were humans ready to be approached? Should Earth be welcomed, guided, or isolated? These were not small questions. A wrong decision could affect many worlds for generations. Each representative activated a small screen in front of him. On the screens, images and videos from Earth began to play. They showed crowded cities with tall buildings, peaceful villages. Near rivers, farmers working under the sun, children studying in schools, and groups of people gathering for celebrations. At first glance, Earth looked busy, colorful, and full of life. But then the screens showed moments of disagreements, protests, and confusion. Some council members leaned back and exchanged doubtful glances. One representative, someone who had always believed humans were too unstable, raised a concern. He said humans were impulsive, that their emotions were too strong, that their decisions changed too often. He pointed out the videos where people argued, competed, or failed to understand each other. They are unpredictable, he said. Unpredictable. Minds can be dangerous. Another representative disagreed. She believed humans had potential. She stood up and reminded the council that emotional depth didn't always lead to chaos. Sometimes it led to compassion, generosity, and bravery. She played a clip showing humans helping each other during a difficult moment. A stranger comforting another stranger. A group of volunteers rebuilding a community center. People sharing food with those who had none. They may argue, she said, but they also care deeply. That matters. The entire room fell silent for a moment. For the first time in a long time, the council members realized how divided they were about Earth. To settle the argument, the coordinator suggested something new. Instead of debating based only on old reports, they would send a fresh team of observers to Earth. These observers would not interfere or reveal themselves. Their goal would be simple. Watch humans closely in their natural everyday life. See who they truly are when no one is judging them. A few volunteers stepped forward for this mission. They were skilled in blending in, understanding emotions, and studying behavior. Before they departed, the coordinator reminded them to observe everything, not just the good or the bad. He said, if humanity is to be judged, it must be judged honestly. When the team traveled to Earth, they arrived quietly, choosing places that represented different sides of human life. One observer went to a busy coastal town, where boats arrived every morning and people gathered near the shore. Another observer chose a calmer area, a small community surrounded by fields and hills where life was slower and people greeted each other by name. A third observer stayed in a large city full of noise, traffic, and rushing crowds. At first, the observers focused on the things the council had been worried about. They saw arguments in streets when cars bumped into each other. They saw people frustrated when lines were long or when someone misunderstood them. They saw workers tired from long hours and students stressed about exams. These scenes seemed to confirm the council's fears. Humans were emotional and reactive, but the observers didn't stop there. They watched longer. They paid attention to what happened after the arguments, after the stressful moments. And slowly, the story began to change. In the busy coastal town, the observer noticed a fisherman helping his competitor fix a broken net. Both men had families to feed, yet they helped each other without hesitation. In the small community with fields and hills, the observer saw people gathering to celebrate the arrival of a new child. Everyone brought food, blankets, and warm wishes, even those who didn't know the family well. In the big city, the observer watched a woman comfort a stranger who had dropped his belongings on the street. She didn't know him, but she knelt down, helped him gather everything, and made sure he was all right. The observers recorded everything. For every moment of frustration, they found a moment of kindness. For every disagreement, they found a moment of understanding. What surprised them most was how quickly humans could shift from stress to laughter. One moment someone was upset, and the next they were joking with a friend. Humans didn't stay down for long. Their emotions moved like waves strong, but always changing. As the days passed, the observers began to understand why the council was confused about humans. On paper, humans looked chaotic, but in real life, they were much more than that. They were dreamers who made plans even when those plans seemed impossible. They were caretakers who checked on their neighbors. They were storytellers who shared their experiences to inspire others. They were problem solvers who kept trying even after failing many times. One of the observers watched a group of teenagers working together to clean a local park. They weren't doing it for money or praise. They simply wanted their community to look better. Another observer noticed how people supported each other during a sudden storm. They shared umbrellas, offered shelter, and checked on the elderly. These were small gestures, but they carried deep meaning. The observers sent their early reports back to the council. The reports were honest. Humans were emotional, yes, but they were also caring. They were unpredictable, yes, but sometimes unpredictability created beautiful moments of unity and courage. The council members reading these reports felt a mixture of surprise and confusion. Some had expected only negative findings. Others were relieved to see signs of hope. While the observers continued their work, Earth itself changed from a file in a council database to a living world full of real people. The council members began discussing humanity with more curiosity. They wondered what humans would be like if they were guided instead of judged. They wondered how humanity would grow if given time. The observers, meanwhile, felt something unexpected. The more they watched humans, the more they felt connected to them. It wasn't because humans were perfect, far from it. It was because humans tried. No matter how difficult life became, humans found a way to keep moving. They argued, cried, stumbled, and made mistakes, but they always got back up. That was something the observers had not seen in many other species. After several days, the observers agreed that Earth deserved a deeper look. They requested permission to stay longer so they could understand the roots of human emotion, resilience, and compassion. The council approved the request, realizing that Earth would not be easy to judge based on brief visits. This marked the quiet beginning of a journey that would change both Earth and the Galactic Council. The observers continued, blending into daily life, silently witnessing moments that revealed the human spirit in its truest form. Their reports would soon shape one of the most important decisions the Council had ever made. But for now, everything remained calm, and Earth continued spinning under its blue sky, unaware that across the galaxy, its future was being debated. Nobody on Earth knew that simple everyday moments, a smile, a helping hand, a shared meal, a comforting word, or being studied by beings from distant worlds. Nobody knew that the fate of their entire planet might depend on how they treated each other during ordinary days. And yet, the observers kept watching. Because in those ordinary days, they believed humanity's real nature would finally be revealed. When the observers continued their mission on Earth, they began stepping deeper into everyday human life. Their goal was not only to watch, but to understand. They needed to see how humans behaved when they were relaxed, stressed, hopeful, tired, disappointed, or simply living quietly. So instead of staying in one place, they started moving through different environments, towns, villages, cities, and even small neighborhoods where people recognized each other by face. The first observer, who had settled near the coastal town, started spending more time walking through early morning markets. Every day, people gathered before sunrise to open their stalls. There were fruit sellers arranging baskets, fishermen setting up tables, and small cafe owners preparing warm drinks. For early customers, the observer noticed how these people greeted each other, even when tired. They laughed about the weather, shared news about their families, and exchanged small jokes that made their long hours feel lighter. On one morning, the observer saw an old man struggling to lift a heavy box from the back of his truck. Before the observer could react, 3 people rushed over to help him. One of them had just arrived for work. Another was already busy loading her own items. The third was simply passing by. None of them asked for payment or thanks. They helped because that was what they felt was right. When the task was done, the old man smiled and offered them fresh fruit. They accepted happily, not because they wanted a reward, but because sharing made the moment feel complete. This simple event made the observer pause. In the Council's reports, humanity had been described as selfish and impatient. But here, in a quiet corner of Earth, the observer saw people helping each other without waiting for recognition. It made the observer wonder how many such moments never got recorded, never got talked about, but still happened every day. Meanwhile, the second observer, who stayed in the small rural community, spent more time watching families. Life there moved slowly, with people waking up at dawn and finishing work by early evening. There were no tall buildings or busy streets. Instead, there were farms, gardens, and long dirt paths where children played after school. The observer noticed how strongly connected the people were. When someone's crop needed watering, neighbors came to help. When someone didn't have transportation to reach the town, another neighbor offered a seat in their truck. On one afternoon, the observer watched a group of teenagers repairing a wooden fence near a community center. They were doing it voluntarily. They laughed, teased each other, shared snacks, and worked until the sun began to set. Their teamwork wasn't perfect, and some boards were crooked, but they were proud of what they accomplished together. The observer recorded each detail. These moments didn't match the image of a planet full of conflict. They saw people who argued sometimes, yes, but they also saw them come together, often without needing to be asked. The third observer, who had chosen to study life in a busy city, discovered a very different rhythm. The city felt loud compared to the quiet rural area. There were honking cars, crowds, and countless shops lining the streets. People walked fast, often with serious expressions, as if racing against time. At first glance, it seemed chaotic. But the observer soon learned that beneath the noise, the city had its own kind of order and warmth. One afternoon, the observer watched a man try to catch a bus. He was running as fast as he could, waving his hand, but the bus began to pull away. Before he lost hope, the driver saw him through the mirror and gently slowed down. The man climbed aboard, out of breath but grateful. The driver smiled and said, "You made it just in time." A small kindness, yet it changed the man's entire mood. On another day, The observer saw a group of children helping a younger kid tie his shoelaces. They were standing in the middle of a crowded walkway, but none of them rushed him. They simply waited until he could walk comfortably again. These were tiny gestures, unnoticed by most passers-by, but the observer understood how meaningful they were. The observers frequently contacted each other, sharing notes about what they witnessed. Each message confirmed the same thing. Humans were emotional, yes, but those emotions were tied to deep connections, deep desires to help, to understand, and to belong. As the days passed, the observers began noticing a pattern across different places. Humans made mistakes, sometimes got frustrated, and often disagreed, but those disagreements rarely lasted forever. After a conflict, humans often tried to find a way forward. Some apologized. Some offered solutions. Some simply moved on and tried to do better next time. One evening, the observer in the coastal town watched a young shopkeeper rushing to close his stall because dark clouds were forming overhead. The wind was picking up, and the waves near the shore looked restless. As he hurried to pack his items, a sudden gust caused one of his baskets to topple over. Fruits rolled in every direction. Before he could panic, people nearby hurried to help him gather everything. Even those who didn't know him joined in. Within minutes, the basket was full again, and the shopkeeper breathed a sigh of relief. He kept thanking everyone, but they simply smiled and went back to what they were doing. The observer wrote in the report that humans were not perfect, but they were soft-hearted when it mattered. The council had focused heavily on human conflicts, but it had overlooked their tendency to rise above small problems quickly. The second observer, in the rural area, witnessed another touching moment. A young girl was learning to ride a bicycle. She tried again and again, but she kept losing balance. Her father stood beside her, patient and encouraging. Every time she fell, he helped her stand up, brushed off the dust, and told her she was doing great. After dozens of tries, she finally managed to ride a few meters without help. Her laughter echoed across the field, and even the observer felt a quiet warmth while watching. The observer noted that this was something unique about humans. They celebrated progress, no matter how small. They believed in trying again, even after failing repeatedly. That willingness to keep going made them stand out. Meanwhile, in the city, the third observer saw something that left a lasting impression. During a busy evening, a subway train stopped due to a technical issue. Many people were tired after long hours of work. Instead of panicking or yelling, most passengers simply sat down, started conversations, listened to music, or made jokes to lighten the mood. One person even shared snacks with those nearby. When the train finally moved again, people clapped in relief, laughing as if they had just experienced an adventure together. The observer wrote in the report that humans had an unusual ability to adapt. They could turn frustrating situations into moments of connection. Their humor helped them stay calm. Their conversations helped them pass time. Their small acts of kindness helped strangers feel less alone. By this time, the observers had collected so many examples that their reports were becoming longer each day. They began to question the council's earlier assumptions. Maybe humanity looked unpredictable because they lived with passion. Maybe they seemed emotional because they cared deeply. Maybe their struggles were signs of growth, not instability. During one conversation, the observers discussed a thought that had been quietly forming in all their minds. Perhaps the council had misunderstood Earth simply because it had judged too quickly. As they continued studying different areas, the observers found themselves more drawn to human stories. They watched families share meals at dinner tables, listened to musicians play on street corners, saw people feeding stray animals, and witnessed strangers offering directions to lost tourists. These things weren't grand or dramatic, but they revealed the heart of humanity. One morning in the city, the observer saw a group of office workers buying breakfast from a small stall. The owner greeted each customer warmly, asking about their day, offering them extra napkins, remembering their usual orders. It was clear he cared about the people who visited his stall. And they cared about him too. They complimented his food, joked with him, and asked about his family. This simple routine created a sense of community in the middle of the busy city. The observer wrote that humans built relationships even in places where one would expect them to be distant. They found ways to connect wherever they went. In the outer countryside, the second observer watched a group of families gathering for an outdoor meal near a river. They cooked simple food, shared stories, let the children play freely, and enjoyed the golden sunlight. They laughed loudly, sang together, and even invited the observer, who appeared as a visitor, to join them for tea. The hospitality felt genuine, not forced. They treated the observer like an old friend. That evening, the observer realized that humans were not defined by their disagreements or mistakes. They were defined by how quick they were to welcome others, to share their joy, and to invite someone into their circle. As days turned to weeks, the observers felt clearer than ever about one thing. The council needed to see Earth with fresh eyes. Judging humanity from a distance had created a picture that was incomplete and unfair. Up close, humans were far more complex and far more hopeful than the reports suggested. Without realizing it, the observers themselves had changed. They didn't see Earth as a problem to solve. They saw it as a world full of stories, full of lessons, full of energy and warmth. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in that reality, as the observers continued their stay on Earth, they began noticing something deeper about humanity, something that wasn't visible at first glance. It wasn't just kindness or small acts of generosity. It was something much more powerful, something that seemed to rise within humans during difficult moments. The observers had read about this quality in older reports, but seeing it directly made the idea take on a new meaning. It was resilience, a word the council often underestimated. The observer in the coastal town saw this clearly one morning when a sudden storm approached the shoreline. Fishermen rushed to pull their boats out of the water. Families secured their homes, and shopkeepers hurried to protect their goods. It looked chaotic, yet there was order within the chaos. People shouted not in fear, but in communication. They warned each other about rising tides. They carried supplies together, and they made sure children stayed close. When the storm finally passed, the damage was noticeable. Boats were flipped, roofs were broken, and the market looked shaken. Yet the observer watched something unexpected. Instead of sitting in sadness, people began cleaning, fixing, rebuilding. Neighbors went door to door, checking on each other. A woman brought warm drinks for everyone who worked. A young boy helped clear debris from the street. The shopkeepers opened their stalls, even though the day had been exhausting. The observer wrote in the report that humans had an unusual way of facing hardships. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They didn't wait for someone else to fix their problems. They started rebuilding, even while tired. This wasn't something the council had ever fully understood. Other civilizations often paused for long periods after difficulties, waiting for official support or perfect plans. Humans, however, rebuilt while the dust was still settling. Meanwhile, the second observer in the rural region saw resilience in quieter, more personal ways. One afternoon, the observer watched a farmer walking across a field that had been damaged by weeks of heavy rain. The soil looked soft and muddy, making it difficult to grow anything. But the farmer did not look defeated. He checked the ground with his hands, made notes, and then returned the next day with seeds and new tools. He didn't complain. He didn't blame nature. He simply adjusted and tried again. The observer noticed that this attitude, trying again, without hesitation, was not rare. It was a common part of human behavior. Whether it was school exams, work challenges, family problems, or health setbacks, humans kept moving. They didn't always move quickly, but they moved. They tried, paused, rested, tried again, and somehow continued the cycle until they found a way forward. One evening, the second observer visited a small gathering in the village. People were sitting near a fire, sharing stories. One man talked about the time he lost his job and had to start over. Instead of giving up, he learned new skills and eventually built a small workshop that supported his family. A woman talked about caring for her elderly parents while managing her own responsibilities. She spoke honestly about how difficult it was, but she also talked about how she slowly found balance by asking for help from neighbors. The observer listened closely, realizing that humans did not hide their struggles. They talked about them openly, turning hardships into lessons. The observer wrote that this openness seemed to give humans strength. When one person shared a story, others felt less alone. When one person succeeded after a long struggle, others believed they could too. In the city, the third observer saw resilience in a different form: creativity. Humans used art, music, and ideas to express feelings they couldn't put into simple words. One morning, the observer watched a street artist painting a mural on an old building. The mural showed scenes of hope, light, and unity. People passing by stopped to watch, take pictures, and even thank the artist for making the street brighter. The observer realized that creativity was not just entertainment for humans. It was a way for them to heal, to speak, to cope, to dream. In other worlds, expression was often limited to formal communication. But on Earth, creativity was everywhere: on walls, in songs, in the way people decorated their homes, in the way they solved problems. Humans used imagination not only to create beauty, but also to survive emotional storms. One evening, the observer saw a group of musicians performing near a busy plaza. Their instruments were simple, but the music they played gathered a large crowd. People who had been rushing just minutes earlier now stood quietly, listening. Some smiled, some closed their eyes, some swayed gently. The observer realized that music had a strange, calming effect on humans. It brought strangers together in a way that words often couldn't. Single quotes T. As the observers compared their findings, they realized that resilience wasn't just a trait. It was a pattern woven into every part of human life. It showed in quiet mornings, in loud streets, in busy markets, in small homes, in open fields. It showed during storms, disappointments, losses, changes. It showed in the way people taught their children to try again, in the way communities rebuilt, in the way strangers comforted each other. It showed even in laughter, because humans often laugh to push through pain. But the observers also saw something that surprised them even more. Human resilience did not come from strength alone. It came from connection. In the coastal town, the observer noticed that people were strongest when they supported each other. After the storm, people didn't wait for help, they became help. They shared food, tools, and time. In the rural village, the observer saw farmers exchanging seeds during difficult seasons, families babysitting for one another, and neighbors delivering meals when someone was sick. In the city, the observer saw strangers forming lines to distribute water during a temporary shortage, or offering seats to others on crowded trains. This connection gave humans the energy to stand up again. When one person felt weak, others stepped in. When one person felt discouraged, a friend or neighbor reminded them of better days ahead. When someone felt alone, someone else listened. The observers agreed that this interconnected resilience was rare. Many advanced worlds in the galaxy had forgotten the value of community. They relied heavily on technology, efficiency, and logic, sometimes losing the simple emotional support humans offered so freely as the observers continued their work. A major turning point occurred. A natural event affected one region. A sudden power outage stretched across several neighborhoods in the city. Lights went out, shops closed early, traffic slowed, and people found themselves without the usual comfort of technology. At first, there was confusion. People checked their phones, asked each other what was happening, and waited for updates. But as minutes turned into hours, something unexpected happened. Instead of panicking, people adapted. Families lit candles and gathered in their living rooms, talking more than they normally did. Neighbors checked on each other to make sure everyone was safe. Children played outside, enjoying the brightness of the moon. People shared snacks, stories, and laughter. The observer saw a group of residents sitting together near an apartment building, eating food that someone had cooked earlier. They invited anyone walking by to join. The observer noted that even without power, the community was full of warmth. When the power finally returned, people cheered. Yet some also laughed and said the quiet evening had been a nice change. It reminded them of simpler times, of closeness, of the joy of being together. The observer wrote in the report that humans didn't fall apart without technology. They became even more connected. This was a revelation. The council had assumed Earth depended too heavily on its machines. But the observers discovered that humanity's real power was not in devices or tools. It was in people. Across all locations, the observers felt that humans possessed a rare balance. They were strong yet gentle, emotional yet determined, tired yet hopeful. Their resilience wasn't loud or dramatic. It was woven into daily actions, small decisions, and quiet courage. The observers also noticed something important. Humans valued progress, not perfection. They knew they made mistakes, but they believed mistakes led to learning. They didn't hide their failures. They grew from them. One night, the observer in the rural area watched a young artist practicing by a riverbank. She painted the same landscape repeatedly, each time trying to make it better. She talked to herself softly, correcting her colors, adjusting her brush strokes, wiping mistakes away. She wasn't painting for money or praise. She painted because she wanted to improve. Her persistence reminded the observer of countless humans around the world who continued working on dreams others couldn't see. As the observers gathered all these experiences, they realized they were no longer just studying humans. They were admiring them. They knew that when the time came to report back to the council, they couldn't simply say humans were chaotic or unpredictable. They had to tell the full truth, that Earth's people had a power that didn't come from technology or strength, but from heart, hope, connection, and resilience. They didn't know it yet, but this understanding would soon reshape everything the council believed about Earth, and what the observers had seen so far was only the beginning. Humanity still had more to reveal, more moments, more courage, more beauty hidden in everyday life, and the observers were ready to witness all of it. The hall of the Galactic Council had never felt so tense. The long curved table, covered with glowing symbols, seemed brighter than usual, as if the whole place was silently judging the moment. Every council member, creatures of different shapes, heights, and colors, watched the main screen where Earth's representatives stood. No one spoke. No one dared to even shift in their seat. The Earth representative took a slow breath. He knew every word he said from this point on could change the fate of the entire planet. In earlier meetings, humans had been treated as if they were unimportant newcomers, too young and too unpredictable to be trusted. But now, something had changed. The council members were no longer looking at Earth with annoyance. They were watching with curiosity and a small spark of respect that had slowly begun to grow since Part 1. The Earth representative sensed this shift, and instead of fearing it, he leaned into it. He began by reminding the council of something. Simple something every species, no matter how advanced, could understand. He talked about the power of unity. How humans were not perfect, how they made mistakes, how they argued and struggled, but how they also rose beyond their limits whenever a crisis came. He spoke with honesty, not trying to make Earth look like a flawless world, but a real one, filled with real people who tried their best. That honesty made the council members listen more carefully. Across the table, a council member with a calm, shimmering face lowered her head slightly, trying not to show her interest too openly. Another member with 4 eyes tilted all of them toward the speaker. Even the council's oldest member, known for being strict and emotionless, seemed almost thoughtful, tapping his long fingers against the table. The Earth representative continued, speaking, explaining how humanity had survived things that should have broken them: diseases, wars, disasters, and losses. He explained how humans stood up again and again, no matter how many times life pushed them down. He described how humanity protected strangers, how they rebuilt after tragedies, how they grew stronger from pain. As he spoke, he realized something. He wasn't just trying to convince the council. He was helping them understand why humans were different, why the council's judgment had been based on fear, not truth. The room remained quiet until he finished. For a moment, it felt like the entire hall was frozen in time. Then one of the council members leaned forward. She spoke with a soft voice, but it carried clearly across the hall. She said she had always been unsure about Earth. She had believed humans were too emotional, too unpredictable, too driven by impulse. But after seeing their actions in the tests, after hearing their explanations, she was beginning to understand that maybe those very traits were the source of their strength. Another member joined in, saying he had never seen such determination in any species. He admitted that humans surprised him again and again. He even confessed that he had been afraid of humanity's potential, but now he wondered if that potential was exactly why the galaxy needed them. But not everyone agreed. On the far end of the table, a large council member with thick armor-like skin raised his voice. He claimed humans were still dangerous, still too young, still too emotional. He insisted that a species capable of strong feelings could easily become a threat. He argued that allowing Earth to join the Galactic Council would be like opening a door to trouble. The hall filled with uneasy murmurs. The Earth representative didn't interrupt. He knew speaking at that moment would only make things worse. Instead, he let the council debate among themselves. Some members supported Earth, some doubted, and some stayed silent, watching everything carefully. The debate continued for so long that even the glowing symbols on the table started to fade slightly, as if they were tired too. The Earth representative listened, trying to stay calm, even though every part of him was tense. He knew this moment could change the next 100 years of human history. Then something unexpected happened. A small hologram lit up above the center of the table. It showed images from earlier tests, the disasters, the simulations, the moments when humans had faced impossible challenges. The hologram replayed the scenes where Earth teams had risked themselves to save others, where they had chosen cooperation. Over fear, where they had shown courage even when failure seemed certain. The images weren't just data anymore. They were proof that humans were not just emotional. They were capable of extraordinary acts because of those emotions. The council members watched silently. Some looked confused, some surprised, and some deeply moved. The Earth representative stood still, watching their reactions. He could feel something shifting again, even more strongly than before. A council member with shimmering blue skin finally spoke. She asked one simple question that made the entire hall go silent. If a species fights for others even when they gain nothing in return, should we fear them? Or should we learn from them? No one answered at first. Then a member from a distant star system nodded slowly. He said he had seen many species throughout his long life, but none had shown potential like humanity. Not because humans were the strongest, not because they had the best technology, but because they had something many advanced species had lost. Over centuries, an unbreakable heart. Those words began shifting opinions across the room. But the debate wasn't over. The armored council member still looked unconvinced. He stood up, towering over everyone. He asked a question that echoed through the hall. If humans have such a strong heart, what happens when that heart is hurt? What happens when they become angry? It was a fair concern, and the hall knew it. But before the Earth representative could respond, another council member spoke. A quiet one. A member who almost never gave opinions. He said humans did get angry. Yes, and humans did make mistakes. But humans also learned. Humans apologized. Humans changed. Humans grew. And most importantly, humans always tried again. He said no species could be judged by their lowest moments. They should be judged by their highest ones. This comment softened the room further. Even the strictest council members looked thoughtful. The Earth representative felt a small warmth inside him. Maybe, just maybe, the council was beginning to see humanity not as a threat, but as a partner. The debate continued for hours, but slowly the atmosphere shifted from distrust to understanding. Some council members even began sharing stories of their own species' early struggles, stories of times when they, too, were judged unfairly. They realized that maybe they had been repeating the same mistake with Earth. As the final discussions ended, the council prepared to vote. The hall grew quiet once again. The Earth representative felt his heartbeat pounding in his chest. He closed his eyes for a moment, whispering a quiet hope inside his mind. When he opened them, the council members lifted their hands one by one. The vote had begun. Each raised hand felt like a small shock in the representative's chest. Some hands lifted slowly, some lifted confidently. Some hesitated before rising. Not everyone voted in Earth's favor, but far more supported the idea than expected. When the final hand lifted, the room fell silent. The glowing symbols on the table shifted and formed a message in the center of a hall. The Earth representative stared at it, hardly believing the words. Earth had taken a huge step, a step no one thought was possible when the journey began. But even with this progress, one thing was clear. This was not the final test. It was only the beginning of what humanity still had to prove. The decision of the Galactic Council spread across the entire hall like a silent wave. Even though the vote had gone in Earth's favor, the room didn't explode with cheers or noise. Instead, it became incredibly calm, almost too calm. The Earth representative stood in the center of the hall, feeling a strange mix of relief and tension at the same time. The Council had accepted Earth's progress, but the message that followed made it clear that humanity was still not fully trusted. They wanted one more test, something deeper, something that would show not just human strength, but human character. The representative took a slow breath, trying to steady himself. He knew the Council wasn't being cruel. They simply wanted certainty. The galaxy had seen powerful species rise and fall, and mistakes made early could scar the future for thousands of years. Humans understood that too. Earth had its own long history of mistakes that took generations to repair. A quiet hum filled the hall as the council members prepared the final challenge. The lights dimmed slightly, and the floor beneath the representative glowed with pale circles, each one containing strange patterns from different alien cultures. This challenge was not about battle or survival. It was about something far more real. One of the council members finally spoke. Her voice echoed through the hall. calm, yet serious. She explained that the next phase would push humanity beyond demonstrations or words. It would show whether humans truly understood the balance between power and responsibility. Many species had failed at this point because power often changed them. Some became proud, some became fearful, and some became careless. Humans were new to the galaxy. Powerful emotions made them capable of great things, but emotions could also cloud judgment. This final test would reveal humanity's true nature. As she spoke, a large hologram formed in the center of the hall, showing an entire star system, several planets floating in orbit around a golden sun. The hologram zoomed in on a specific planet covered with forests, oceans, and bright blue skies. It was beautiful, peaceful, untouched. The council explained that this world, known as Lumion, had recently gone silent. No signals, no activity, nothing at all. The last recording showed a crisis. The planet's core was destabilizing. If something wasn't done soon, the whole world would collapse on itself. The species living there was gentle and quiet, known for avoiding conflict and never asking for help. Because they rarely communicated, the council did not know what condition they were currently in. The crisis was real, not a simulation. Lumion needed help, and many council members wanted to see how humanity would respond. Would humans act for their own benefit? Would they act only when there was something to gain? Or would they step forward even when the reward was nothing more than compassion? The Earth representative understood immediately. This wasn't just a task. It was a window into humanity's heart. He nodded slowly. He knew what he had to say. He told the council that Earth would help, even if they had nothing to gain, even if no one thanked them, even if the mission was dangerous. He said that humans didn't choose kindness only when the situation was convenient. They acted because it was the right thing to do. His voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. It flowed naturally, like it came straight from the core of who humans were. Some council members exchanged glances. Others nodded softly, quietly impressed. One or two still seemed unsure, but this time their doubt felt less sharp. The council accepted the answer, and the next moment, a transport platform lit up behind the representative. He stepped onto it, and within seconds he was moved through a series of shimmering portals until he appeared inside a large observation room. Clear screens showed Lumion in real time. The planet's surface was trembling. Waves crashed unevenly along the shore. Clouds twisted in unnatural patterns. A team of scientists from Earth joined him soon after. They were calm but alert, ready to help. None of them had grand titles or famous names. They were regular people, engineers, researchers, analysts each, carrying the weight of their responsibility with quiet determination. The team began examining the readings. The planet's core was indeed unstable. Temperature spikes appeared across the crust. Underground pressure was rising. If it reached a certain point, Lumion would be destroyed from within. The scientists exchanged ideas while the council observed. From afar, the Earth representative watched them discuss options. They disagreed at times, raising their voices, arguing fast, and then calming down again. They didn't hide their emotions, but they also didn't let those emotions break their unity. Instead, their passion helped them think more creatively. This was something no simulation could have shown. It was raw human teamwork. After hours of analysis, the team developed a plan. The planet's core could be stabilized using a series of energy anchors and cooling channels placed deep underground. But the process was dangerous. The team would have to land on the planet itself, work in unstable regions, and endure unpredictable tremors. The council hesitated for a moment when they heard the plan. The mission sounded risky, even reckless. But the Earth representative simply looked at the team members, and all of them nodded without fear. One council member commented quietly that humans seemed too eager to put themselves in danger. But another member replied that maybe that was exactly why they were so effective in crisis. They didn't freeze when things got difficult. They moved. The mission was approved. Within hours, the Earth team descended toward Lumion. The sky around them flickered with strange lights as the planet shifted unpredictably. The pilots steadied the craft with skill, guiding it through rough winds until they finally landed on a grassy field near the first designated anchor point. The ground trembled slightly beneath their feet, reminding them that time was running out. They unloaded equipment and began setting up the energy anchors. The work was exhausting. They had to dig deep, avoiding sudden bursts of heat or fissures that opened without warning. Each time the ground shook violently, the team stopped and held their breath. Then they continued working faster each time. The Earth representative helped too, carrying equipment, steadying tools, wiping sweat from his forehead as dust filled the air. He didn't take a leadership role here. He didn't give orders or try to look important. He worked shoulder to shoulder with everyone else. Far above, the council watched everything from orbit. Some were visibly anxious, gritting their teeth each time the ground cracked. Others were amazed to see humans dive into danger instead of hesitating. One council member whispered something almost no one heard. They risk everything for a world that isn't even theirs. By evening, the team had installed the first set of anchors. The ground stabilized slightly. Tiny tremors still shook the area, but not as violently. The second location was deeper in the forest, surrounded by towering trees with glowing veins. Despite the beauty, the air felt heavy, as if the planet was groaning beneath its surface. The team moved as quickly as possible. Night began to fall. Strange lights floated between the trees, and distant rumbling echoed through the ground. The representative glanced at the sky, worried that the planet might not hold long enough. At one point, a huge crack tore open only a few steps away from where they were working. The Earth team pulled back quickly, their hearts racing. Dust and heat rushed upward. One scientist stumbled, nearly falling, but another grabbed his arm just in time. A council watching from orbit gasped. But the Earth team didn't run. They waited a moment, let the dust settle, then stepped forward again, positioning the next anchor. Hours passed. Sweat covered everyone's faces. Their hands ached, their backs hurt, their tools heated. But they kept working, and then something unexpected happened. As the final anchor was being placed, soft figures emerged from the glowing trees. The native species of Lumion stepped forward. They were silent, gentle beings, their bodies almost shimmering like light. They approached slowly, watching the humans with wide, curious eyes. The humans froze for a moment. The council leaned closer to their screens. The Lumion people didn't speak in words. Instead, they placed their hands on the cooling soil near the energy anchor. Their faint glow brightened. They understood what the humans were doing. They understood that Earth was saving them. The emotion that filled the moment didn't need translation. The humans smiled softly. A quiet calm washed through the forest. Working together, even without language, they completed the final anchor. When the last device activated, the ground stopped shaking. The heat burst slowed. The tremors faded. The planet took its first deep, steady breath. The mission was successful. The Lumion beings bowed gently to the humans. It was a simple gesture, but it carried meaning deeper than words. The Earth team bowed back, humbled and touched. Far above, in the council hall, silence filled the air. But it wasn't the tense silence from earlier parts of the story. This time, it was stunned respect. The council had expected effort. They had expected teamwork. But they had never expected humanity to risk so much for a world that offered them nothing in return. They had never expected humans to help without needing praise. They had never expected humans to bond so quickly with strangers who didn't even speak the same language. The council finally understood something essential: humanity's real power wasn't their tools. It wasn't their strength. It wasn't their intelligence. It was their heart. And now the galaxy had seen. The quiet after the mission felt different from the quiet before it. Earlier, the silence in the Galactic Council's grand hall had been heavy with doubt. Now it carried an unexpected warmth, as if something soft and invisible had settled over everyone. Each council member looked toward the large viewing screen where the Earth team could be seen inside their landing craft. Their clothes were covered in dust, their faces tired, but their expressions were peaceful. They had done something that didn't need applause. They had helped simply because help was needed. No one in the council spoke for a long while. It wasn't because they were unsure of what to say. It was because the moment felt too meaningful to interrupt. The Earth representative stood at the center of the hall again, waiting quietly. He didn't smile broadly or look proud. He simply waited the way someone waits after giving their best call. Steady, ready for whatever comes next. One of the council members finally broke the silence. Her voice was gentle, softer than it had been at any point in the earlier meetings. She said she had seen many species rise in the galaxy. Some were bold, some were intelligent, some were incredibly strong. But she had never seen a species so willing to risk itself for others without expecting anything in return. She admitted she had doubted humans, not because she thought they were bad, but because they were different. And sometimes difference feels like danger. Today, she said, she realized that difference could also be hope. Her words echoed through the hall. Another council member added that humans reminded him of something his own ancestors once believed, that the true measure of a species was not how much they protected themselves, but how much they protected others. He said humans embodied that idea more clearly than he expected. Slowly, more voices joined the conversation. One mentioned how humans worked together, even when the ground was breaking beneath their feet. Another talked about the moment when they caused the native beings of Lumion touched the soil beside the humans. A moment that didn't need translation, yet held meaning deeper than any speech. The Earth representative listened without interrupting. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt grateful. Not because Earth was being accepted, but because the Council was finally seeing humanity the way he always believed they should be seen: imperfect yet sincere, emotional yet strong, flawed yet capable of extraordinary kindness. The Council leader, a calm figure who rarely showed emotion, looked around the hall slowly. He had watched everything from the moment the observers first visited Earth to the final anchor being placed on Lumion. He had seen humans disagree, support each other, make mistakes, fix them, and continue moving forward. He had seen something in them that many species lost as they grew more advanced: the ability to care deeply. Almost FEARLESSLY. When he finally spoke, the hall grew even quieter. He announced that Earth had passed the final test, not with perfection, but with humanity. He said he no longer saw Earth as a threat or as a world that needed monitoring. He saw Earth as a partner young compared to most of the galaxy. Yes, but full of potential that could uplift others, not harm them. He raised his hand, and a glowing symbol appeared in the air, an official sign that Earth would join the galactic community as a recognized and respected member. For a moment, the Earth representative didn't move. He simply stared at the symbol, letting the meaning sink in. Then he lowered his head, not in pride, but in humility. He thanked the Council quietly, his voice steady and warm. He said humans wouldn't forget this moment, not because they had been accepted by a powerful group, but because they had been understood. Some of the Council members smiled softly. It was a small detail, but it mattered. These were the same beings who once thought humans were too unpredictable to trust. And now they smiled, The representative asked permission to bring his team back home. The council approved immediately and arranged a safe return. Before the transmission ended, one council member leaned forward and said something unexpected. He thanked Earth for reminding the galaxy what compassion looked like. The representative didn't know how to respond, so he just nodded gently. That was enough. As the Earth team prepared to leave Lumion, the forest glowed softly around them. The native beings stood nearby, watching with calm, peaceful eyes. They didn't speak, but their expressions said enough. One of them stepped forward, placing a hand on the Earth representative's arm. The touch was gentle, filled with quiet gratitude. The representative smiled, a tired but genuine smile. The team boarded their craft. The engines hummed softly, lifting them into the sky. Through the window, they watched the glowing forest shrink into the distance. Then the planet curved below them like a blue-green jewel, whole and stable again. A soft pride filled the cabin. Not the loud kind that comes from showing off, but the quiet kind that comes from knowing you did something good. When they reached orbit, the Council's ships escorted them to the main station, where they would officially sign Earth's entry into the galactic community. The station was enormous, filled with beings from dozens of worlds. Each species had its own way of expressing emotion. Some brightened their colors, some lowered their posture, some folded their wings. But today, many of them nodded respectfully as the humans passed. They weren't being watched out of suspicion. Any more. They were being welcomed. The signing ceremony was simple. A holographic document hovered in the air, glowing softly. The Earth representative placed his hand in the center, and the symbol changed shape, confirming the planet's inclusion. There were no loud celebrations, no fireworks. It didn't need any. The meaning of the moment was powerful as it was. After the ceremony, several council members approached the representative privately. One told him that the galaxy needed species like human species that could feel deeply, act decisively, and inspire others. Another admitted that he once feared humans, but now he respected them. A third said she hoped humans would share their stories with the galaxy, because stories were as important as discoveries. The representative listened with gratitude. He knew Earth was far from perfect. He knew humans had a lot to learn. But that was what made this moment special. Acceptance didn't require perfection. It required sincerity. When the humans finally returned to Earth, the sky looked softer than usual. The clouds drifted gently. The sun warmed the ground in a mellow glow, and the familiar scent of home filled the air. The Earth representative stood by the landing ramp for a moment, breathing deeply. Everything looked the same as when he left. Yet something inside him felt completely transformed. The team walked through the arrival area, greeted by workers who didn't know the full story yet. They only knew that the team had gone on an important mission. But the representative could already imagine how the news would spread. Earth wasn't just seen anymore. Earth was understood. And soon, people around the world would know that they weren't alone in the universe. Later that evening, as the representative walked outside, he watched a group of children playing nearby. They were laughing, running around, and creating stories from imagination alone, stories about planets, spaceships, and friendships between worlds. The sight made him smile. Humanity's future was right there, in curiosity, in creativity, in the simple ability to dream. He thought about everything the Earth team had gone through. The Council's doubts, the missions, the arguments, the fear, the strength, and the final moment of unity on Lumion. All of it led to this new beginning. The representative looked up at the night sky. The stars felt closer now. Not because Earth had moved, but because the galaxy had opened its doors. Somewhere out there, the council members were discussing new possibilities. Somewhere out there, the beings of Lumion were watching their healed world grow strong again. And somewhere out there, Humanity now had a place, not as conquerors or observers, but as contributors. A soft breeze moved through the air. The representative closed his eyes, letting the feelings settle inside him. Humanity's real power had never been strength or technology. It had always been their heart, their ability to care, their ability to rise, their ability to choose kindness, even when no one was watching. And now, for the first time, the galaxy understood that too. The story of Earth was just beginning.